Retailer's Roadmap Cruise Control, where we navigate the roadways of life, business, and everything in between. Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Cruise Control Podcast. This is episode number 25, which is a pretty cool little milestone for us. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Justin Labato, and he is of, what's the name of your business? JL's Auto Salon. Premium.
JL's Showroom Auto Salon.
God, every time I mess that up. So
maybe there's too many words, you know what I mean?
Well, maybe I'm just not very smart. Maybe that's it. So JL. So Justin and I have known each other for a while. I think we're probably coming up on eight or 9 years probably that we've known each other, which is pretty cool. Justin has also explain what you do for Buff and Shine, because I think, you want to say brand ambassador, but it goes well beyond brand ambassador.
So I never had that title. We've always called it lead global consultant, and that's for basically anything that has to do with the detail industry. So you could encompass any and all, from distribution, manufacturing, end user, technician, detailer. I play in all the different fields, and I've adapted to that over the years as I've worked with Buff and Shine and handed different tasks, but throughout those years also building relationships. So it's all second nature. So as a consultant for them and being the ears to the ground for the detail industry and helping with development of pads and listening to the end user and just, making sure that we're staying relevant. And that's kind of my platform with them, and bouncing ideas back and forth as a team effort with myself and Liz and Rich, the two owners.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's a great move on their part, because it's just, that's money well spent. I'm sure the ROI on your consulting fees has been huge for them, just to be able to get feedback and be able to understand the industry better and be able to have that connection and network. A lot of times companies are, willing to pay for the network also, which is, we're pragmatic about that. And that's a good thing for those of us that actually have a network. So that's that's nice. Hey, one of the things I always ask about on these podcasts is your detailing superhero backstory. This whole, anytime you have a superhero movie, there's always this backstory. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard it. I do want to delve in a little bit more than the average, but go ahead and give me, and take as long as you want. We've got a long time on this. So give me your backstory on how you got into the industry, kind of where you've progressed, some of these brand, consulting things that you're doing, and kind of where we're looking at in the future too. That'd be cool to understand.
So let me take the opportunity then to go pre-industry, pre-detailing. That way it kind of gives a bigger, broader picture of me and the roots of who I am, which also helps with what I have achieved and how far I've come. Everybody has a story. Everybody has great stories. Some people have stories laid out for them, because they've had wealthy parents. They've had great upbringings. Me, not so much. I grew up in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, the wonderful county that brought us the first 5 episodes of Cops, which is now a nationwide, TV show that everybody's familiar with.
I think it moved to Oklahoma, where all my family's from after that, because that's I'm pretty sure I've seen a couple of them on there.
So growing up in the area of South Florida, Pompano is where I was pretty much born in Broward General, raised in Pompano. And that's all I knew growing up, was the lifestyle of growing up more of in a street era of the late 80s, early 90s. And that kind of molded me. I was a pain in the ass. I was a little badass. I didn't quite listen. Kindergarten, I failed kindergarten because let's just say my mom liked to keep me home. Second grade, I was already in a behavior school that in their portables, they had padded rooms for kids that just spazzed out. By third grade, I went to go live with my grandmother. And at that time, I was under a very strict New York Italian style household. And she was the little redhead with the poofy hair that you see in the old style Italian movies that if I said something wrong, it was 5 across the eyes, immediately across the table. No ifs, ands, or buts. And she was cool because she was still in the mix of things herself. She was a bartender. So she was this, little old redhead old lady bartender that, didn't take no shit from New York. And so she was raising me at the time. And she had me straight. And so I had to go live back with my mom, who, was in the bad part of town and where I was at. So I followed that groove until I moved up to Central Florida with my father one summer because I failed 7th grade, skipping school, chasing tails, smoking weed, everything that a 13 and 14-year-old just aspires to do, because that's the success of everything. But we're talking mid-90s. It was a different culture there for where I grew up. When I came to Central Florida, it was a different culture up here. Cocoa Beach, Cape Canaveral, it was very skater lifestyle, surfer lifestyle. That mid to late 90s alternative music too was hitting the charts. You had Green Day, you had all these things. So it was something new to me, and it was changed. So I started that lifestyle. And it was also a different average of culture in the schools versus where I was. So I wasn't the minority no more, to say. So, growing up around that, I always respected everybody for who they were and what they were. But I don't feel I got the level of respect I probably should have, because I was more of a minority. But saying that and moving forward into this area that I moved into in Central Florida, it broadened my horizons. But then, unfortunately, I had to go visit my mother every other weekend on a Greyhound bus.
Wow. In there. Yep.
Custody. Things were different in the 90s. The judge said it wasn't this whole balance where you get this child sharing custody. It was, no, you get holidays, you get weekends, especially if you're out of area, make it work. The judge looked at the two parents and said, get your shit together, or I will get it together for you. Yep. Nowadays, they're like, no, sign this, sign that. You guys just need to figure this out. They try to mediate it all. It's just a softer approach, right? Back then it wasn't so soft, but I was kind of, I don't want to say victim to that, because it gave me two different lifestyles. I was going down there and living on the streets every weekend, and the party lifestyle was already prepared and ready for me when I got off the Greyhound bus. And then I come back here, up, live with my father, and that got me in a lot of trouble. I almost lost a foot to Broward County Sheriff's Office police dog. And then I ended up getting in big time trouble because me and a friend of mine put somebody in the hospital in a coma, and I ended up doing a little bit of time for it. So little fast forward on that, I did my time. I did 15 months, and I did a total of 18 months. 3 months of that was actually a boot camp that used to be established in Broward County through all the deputies. They all had to go through their own training. I forget what state they had to go through to become drill instructors, and they all had to be from a branch of the military. So this was a true disciplinary boot camp. Needless to say, I graduated with honors, platoon guide. You couldn't do both, but somehow I established that. I was one of few that did, and I learned a shitload from it. And if I could repeat it, I would have, because that, I think, changed the path of my life in regards to attitude and maturity. At that time, I was 18, almost 19, and I got out. And here's the kicker. I had 2 years house arrest and 12 years of probation with $33,000 and change sitting over my head of restitution. So what did I do? I got out and got my shit together, and I got into boxing, which I had been doing when I was in there a little bit. I was lucky to run into a old boxing coach that was from a rec center down there that unfortunately developed the habit of crack cocaine and found himself locked up and cleaned up. And then I started taking lessons from him. Hindsight of that, you could say, hey, you had this great guy that just took a downward spiral and you learned some stuff from him. And then there's other side of that. You could be like, hey, you learned how to box from a crackhead. So, but it's all perspective, I tell you.
Right.
It's all who's telling the story and who's listening and what they just caught. So with that, it was something I really liked to do because I was working out a lot. That's what turned me on to working out. I had never been into sports prior to that. My early years, my parents tried to get me into martial arts. I mean, that was 80s and 90s. That was the outlet for kids other than just regular sports such as football, basketball, things like that, baseball. I was never into that stuff. I always liked being on my own, and fighting was what I just grew up to, literally from the time I could remember first grade all the way up. And that's what got me in trouble. So that was my outlet of energy. In the early years, I was a little softy, but I was a kid. I mean, I can't blame myself. But as I grew up, I got tougher and I learned how to fight. And then I realized, oh shit, I know how to fight. I know how to fight really good, and taking the punches are that bad. And so that's what kind of drove me into starting to do things in the backyard when I was on house arrest. And then off house arrest, which was cleaning, it could be, which, mind you, anybody who does 2 years house arrest, the statistics, 80% of them go back in and fail and violate. Wow. So I cleared that, got on probation. Mind you, I was I met a girl, ironically, in the same building I'm in today that I own, because I was working at the car audio shop and, did all the right things with trying to, as a young man, renting an apartment, renting a house, owning a house, getting married, then having a child. None of that in reverse. Not to say that's wrong, but I try to do it in the right path. And even with doing that, executing that, and training hard in the evening, I still had a failed marriage, which wasn't my fault. It's never the guy's fault. Never the guy's fault. No, that was it was just young and things just didn't align, and I'm so glad they didn't, based on my marriage now, but in my life now. But and I just worked for people, but I always worked for somebody, and I always tried to work up the ladder of being better, having a better position in whatever company or whatever I was doing. I always aspired to do that. And I always watched the people who own the businesses and tried to take what I could from them, not ever knowing if I would ever be a business owner. I'm in my early 20s at that point. My outlet was boxing. I was in amateur boxing. My working out, I was just addicted to it. That was my drug. That kept me out of trouble. And as soon as I got off house arrest and was able to fight USA amateur boxing and fight unsanctioned in a lot of the clubs in the early 2000s that were doing club fights at a lot of these nightclubs, they were unsanctioned, but they were still managed by people who had affiliation with real fights and real affiliation with fights. So they managed it well enough to where they weren't just putting drunk people in the rings.
And they were checking like glove size and weight and all that.
Oh, yeah. Mouthpiece, headgear. I mean, all that stuff still had to line up. Now, if I said, hey, at 160, 165, I want to get in here with this 200-pound dude, they're going to look at me and say, are you sure?
Yeah.
And they're going to ask me 2 or 3 times, and then I'm going to say, hell yeah, let's do it. So there's that, right? But yeah, that kept me going. That also gave me a lot of natural respect in my own home community, because I didn't have to be on the streets to prove myself. I did it in the ring, and people knew from my past that I would check them as well out of the ring. But I stopped doing that because they knew that it wasn't worth it. And a lot of times I would just try to find more or less the friendship behind it, because the outcome was always crappy. It was either one of us were going to get hurt or in jail.
Right.
That's all there was to it. But the addiction to the working out, the addiction to pushing myself, the addiction to the limits of just the cardio, the running, the sprints, the how hard I could go, and the limits to everything with that really pushed me forward. And it gave me a drive that was a work ethic drive that I think was in any job I had showed. And I think that would help me have good jobs.
Yeah.
It wasn't until about,
my wife has done boxing, and I used to go every, 3 days a week we're going to the gym. And I don't think most people realize how hard that sport is. It's just, it takes so much work and so much discipline.
Sports.
And, all combat sports for sure.
Yeah. And they cross-reference a lot of the trainings and repurpose some of the training into other things, with maneuvers and football and things like that from boxing, just footwork. And it goes both ways. There's not just one side to it, which is so cool to see that, because so many great coaches over the years, it used to be such a small network of them, but the every sport and every training method has grown so much, and there's so many different ways to do it worldwide that there's so much cross-referencing that makes it just that much more fun, because there's something always new somebody can bring to the table going to a different coach. But yeah, during that time, working, training in the evenings, I missed a lot of my son, who's 18 now. In his early years, I do know I missed a lot of evening time because I was going to the gym, spending 2-3 hours, 3-4 days a week training. I was a fighter. I was everything about me. You cut me and I bled as a fighter, and that's how I was. And I kept going, and I never lost that. But work, life, everything gets in the way. Like I said, I always had good jobs. And in the meantime, again, having this probation every month, having to check in, go into this office, listening to these freaking guys that come in there talking about how they did smoke, but they're going to get piss tests. And I don't understand why I got to get piss tests, and like all these poor ass excuses. And I'm just like, you guys are idiots. Like these are not my people. Like some of them I vibe with, but they're really not my people. Like they just keep finding themselves in the same shit show. And I'm like, no. I was like, I got to figure this out. And the only thing that was over my head was money. Like
Mhm.
I could have got early termination after 3 years of probation if I would have paid it off. But that was a lot of money at the time. $33,000 is like $1 million to me now.
This episode is brought to you by Detailer's Roadmap. Hey, spoiler alert, that's us. We all know you need a kick-ass website in order to be successful with your business. The good news is, at Detailer's Roadmap, kick-ass websites, that's kind of what we do. With the latest performance, designs, and SEO strategies, Detailer's Roadmap is your one-stop shop to be successful on the web. And don't forget, we have the best support team in the industry. Whether you're an existing partner looking to improve your lead generation or you need a brand new website, Detailer's Roadmap is here to help you be successful on the web. So go to detailersroadmap.com/success and get started today. That's detailersroadmap.com/SUCCESS. Yeah.
And it's like, but things happen. About 2007, 2008, I lost my father, who I was really close to. I started going through my divorce, and things just started piling up on me, and life just really took a wild turn. And I could have went to alcohol. I could have had all these poor ass excuses that people have that just end up going south. You know what I mean? I could have went to this. I could have gotten locked back up. I could have used all that emotion on somebody and hurt them really bad. There's just so many things I think about that. Like, I could have used all those as excuses, but instead I worked through it, I figured it out, and basically ended up at a point where I got unemployed because the company I was working for, which are my customers now, and they're great people, but they were dealing with, as a business, which I understand now in 2008, the housing community taking a crap, the economy taking a crap. They had to lay off a bunch of people. I was one of them. And then that's where that second phase of my life all started. That's where, when I got laid off, I took 2 weeks of just nothing, went to the gym, did me, and then I came back to the building again that I'm in, and I had worked here in the early years. It was Car Audio. He had been here established since '81, so long-standing business. And I came back here because one of the installers knew about detailing, and I had at the time got laid off, was getting this unemployment, which I was like, sweet, I'm getting something. There's some money coming in. It wasn't much, but then my engine blows up on the car I had. I'm like, oh crap, what do I do? So I, side of a big highway, I find this old beater. It was like a 97 Nissan Altima, white at that, so it was all faded, single stage paint. And I come here and I'm like, what can I do to make this look presentable? And he's like, oh, try this, try that, this clay bar. And I got the clay bar in my hand. He showed me the smooth spot versus the rough spot. I'm like, oh, that's cool as shit, dude. I was like, tell me what I got to buy. Go to the store, buy it all. I was like, can I come here and do it in the parking lot? And the owner's like, I don't care. I got space. And so I did it again in the parking lot of this building that I now very own. And that's what kind of lit the fire underneath me to be like, you know what? Sweating, hard work, dealing with customers, I can do this. I've got great customer service. I got that. I built up a lot of eyes for detail in different jobs I had over the years, from finishing wood to painting, doing customer service. I'm like, I think I could do this. Let me get a list. Made a list, had about 5 guys locally on there. The first 3 or 4, they completely shut me down. They're like, you are not going to come in here, learn how to detail, and then go out and start your own business locally. Not happening. The last guy on the list gave me an opportunity. That was June 1st of 2008. January 1st of 2009, his business was mine, and I was on my own.
Wow.
6 months later. Now, granted, that wasn't any type of arrangement that was just set in place upon working for him. This was something that, while I was working for him, when you work with somebody, just like with your wife, and you're there day in and day out, you get to know people. When you get to work with just having one employee, it becomes personal. It's business and it's personal. And what happened was, we got to know each other real well, and he got to trust me. And his uncle, that's on the south side of the county, runs a water conditioning business for reverse osmosis, water conditioning systems for homes that are on well water. And he was wanting to get out of the trade and the business, and he had been doing it, I guess, for like 25 plus years. So he offered it to him to buy and take over. So he came to me and said, I've only been doing this for 4 years, got a great reputation. Why don't you buy my business so I could go take over this one? I didn't have no money. It was just a gentleman's agreement and a handshake.
Yeah.
But that's at the same time being grateful for being raised on the other side of the fence with my dad in that Italian household with integrity, respect, and just giving you my word kind of thing. That's how he knew that was who I was. So for that, we had that trust of being able to make that agreement and transition. And so I made payments to him over time, and then literally after taking over the business, I was November, December, where I was at up the street where his business was. They came to me in this building. They're like, "Hey, we got a spot that opened up. You want to go in there?" I'm like, it was a couple $100 more overhead.
Yeah.
It wasn't even 2 months into having the business yet. And I'm looking at the overhead I already have. And I'm like, shit, $200 more is a lot.
Yeah.
So my buddy, who was the window tinner at the time, really good friend of mine, he came to me like a couple weeks later. He's like, bro, he was like, there's another guy that's looking at that space. He goes, I suggest you jump on it before it's gone. I'm like, oh. I'm like, all right. So I moved in, and it was the best thing I ever did because I was able to fleece off of the window tint and car audio business that they had, and it helped build me up, and it landed me being here since that end of 2008 timeframe. And then also having the opportunity, which was never in the forecast, to buy the building and the property and own it and expand my business and go from the first 680 square foot shop that I moved from that to 1,500 to 2,500 to 7,300 with 7 employees, and being unemployed and 25 years old to 41. And those first couple years of building the business, from that 2009, my first official year of revenue for myself, to 2013, that allowed me to pay off the rest of my remainder restitution from the probation of when I screwed up when I was a teenager, to clear myself. And I did it still day for day. It kind of sucked.
Yeah.
But all of that out, and go down to the Broward County Courthouse and send in my termination letter in front of the judge and show him I did it. They were all like, they were kind of at a loss of words. They're like, son, you did this day for day, and I don't see one violation here. I said, no, sir. I said, I worked out at the Police Athletic League gym and with amateur boxing and just kept my nose down. And I said, there was still people in my life that were doing dirt, but I just never affiliated at a level that got me in trouble. I was just honest with them.
Yeah.
And that was that. And so after 2013, that allowed me to do a little bit more outreach of traveling, not staying within the county and the state. And my first show was Mobile Tech, 2014. My local distributor for Carbright, his name's Scott Tucker. I had a great relationship with him because of that 4 to 5 years of building my brand, I had become the go-to shop in my area. I was the guy that, especially, was built on interiors. I mean, my first year of achieving over $100,000 in revenue was 2012. So going into 2013, and that was on Common Core detailing. That was wash, wax, and interiors. There was no.
That's not even real detailing, Justin. I don't know how.
I know, right? What was I thinking? And this was me and maybe a part-time guy. So like, I didn't have a full-time guy or a full-time crew. This was just me hustling 6 days a week. I was every day, Monday through Saturday. Nothing stopped me. I didn't get sick. The holidays, I didn't give two. They didn't faze me unless my wife yelled at me. But I was proud. I thought I did something. And I thought, the $100,000 was this big, hurdle of being able to make money, not in my pocket, obviously. Let's clear that out the way. This is gross revenue, not net, but gross. This is what I did for the year as a total before all expenses got taken out. Obviously, I was taking withdrawals, but I did start as an S Corp. I didn't start as an LLC. So I didn't get hit with all these employment taxes and this and that. I had a kid, so that allowed me to be able to recover some money and at least get a refund at the end of the year to help my personal taxes. So I highly suggest S Corp all day long. But of course,
yeah,
I guess I can't say that. It has to be something you talk with.
Well, we're not CPAs or accountants, but I can tell you that an S Corp over an LLC, or especially the sole proprietorship, you only have to pay half of the self-employment tax. Self-employment tax is 15.3%. So you save 7.65% off the top. I remember the first year and this was from my web development business. First year, my accountant was like, why are you still filing this way? And I'm like, this is just what I did. We switched to an S corp, and and we had huge contracts at the time, and I think it saved me like 25 grand the first year in taxes. And so, like, dude, we're not CPAs, but if you're an LLC only and everything is a pass through, talk to your accountant about S corp and the protections it can give you, especially, you know, because we don't want to pay more taxes than we have to.
Well, and rule of thumb on that, from what I've heard from other accountants and CPAs, is that when a business is doing $50,000 gross profit, at that point, that is the sign.
Yeah.
If you were LLC, to transition to S corp, that is your pivot point. So just to keep that in mind, they kind of use that as a rule of thumb to say.
Yeah, because that's when the benefits of the tax shelter of the S corp actually, you know, overweigh the cost of actually setting it up and managing it and all that stuff.
And I didn't know any of this going into it. Listen, I got 9th, half a 10th grade education, and then did my time, got my GED, and that's that. This has all been, you know, live and learn scenarios as I've gone through life, and along with also having 2 ears in one mouth, you know what I mean? Listening twice as much as I speak, but also being inquisitive when it's time to be. So that way I retain very well. And for that reason, it's allowed me to get me as far as I have, and also surrounding and networking with the right people that are intelligent enough to make sure that I don't have to worry about 9 out of 10 of them being wrong. I can worry about 9 out of 10 of them being right.
Right.
And so, so that again, going back to that 2013 timeframe and going into 14, that's when I achieved that. I thought I was doing well. I had a good market share for my brand. I was the interior guy at that. And 2014 comes along. I started dabbling at the end of 13 into ceramic coating. So I was what, Rennie would call an early adapter, the term he uses. And I'm glad I was, because I that's when I started to learn about what Auto Geek was and what they had to offer. Started learning more about, right around 2012. No, let's say 2011, 2012. I knew who they were, but I was more or less reading a lot about the articles from Mike from his forums and his how-to videos.
That's Mike Phillips, by the way.
Yep, Mike Phillips. And same thing with Rennie, but I wasn't in tune with business at the time enough to listen to Rennie, and that's my bad, because I should have. But everything comes in time, and everything is timing. So
yeah, because the dude literally wrote the book on how to start a car detailing business. Right?
But I was so focused on my craft, and you have to, there's one or the other, right? You could balance them. Don't get me wrong. Everybody does it differently. But for me, it was build the craft, build the reputation, then build the business. Because that way I have something to stand on. Then there was integrity I could be confident enough to stand behind my work and charge what my value was. That to me was the biggest thing. If I could charge what my value is, I know I can knock it out, because I had already built up at that point. In 5 years, I'm like, oh, here's some more statistics that are thrown at me. I'm going to beat these too.
Right.
But mobile tech came around, and that's when I finally got to meet the celebrities of our industry, the Mike Phillips, the Rennie, the Jason Rose. I was actually brought in from the guy I told you from Carbright, Scott Tucker. He got me a pass under McGuire's, and that's when I met David Pedre and Jason Rose. They were working for McGuire's at the time. This is how far back it was. This was upon the launch of the very first microfiber system from McGuire's. And
I think that's the year. That's probably the year we met. Actually, 2014. I think was probably 2014, 15, somewhere in there. We probably met.
Yeah, because I did. Then everything just it hasn't stopped. That year triggered something in the universe that just kept giving me opportunities. I never asked for anything. I just was always in the right place at the right time with the right people and doing the right thing. And it went from that to the training, to Air Force One, to meeting a lot of more people, and people seeing what I've already established. And granted, when I went through Rennie's training, I was going into my 7th year of business. I wasn't a newbie.
Yep.
I was already in my craft, and he knew that, but he fine-tuned me more, but more or less he balanced me on cracking the whip on the business, life, family aspect, and more business too, to understand my direction. Thank God, because that, I don't know, it just had an epiphany, and it just changed everything. Now, granted, I still was taking care of myself, but I got to tell you, after 2014 going into 15, getting with mothers and doing the Bear Jackson shows and doing more traveling and just one thing after another. That traveling and eating those dinners and being treated nice. And I like to drink. Well, I used to like to drink heavier, but I wasn't an alcoholic, but I like to social drink and I could hold my liquor. Now, there's not one time anybody could ever say in this industry they see me out there twisted acting a fool. If anything, they're always like, why are you watching everybody? So, but my point is like, I could keep them going and still hold myself up. And so all of that, to my point of eating and drinking with all these travels and shows, it starts to catch up with your body.
Oh yeah.
And when I used to fight, I was at 152, 165, and I started getting up into that 180. And then last year and this year, I was up in that 195, 205. I got up to 208. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, this isn't good. And I was feeling it.
Yeah, I've been there. The 206 was my highest, but I'm also a little bit taller than you. But
yeah, just a little.
But yeah, that's
I'm average. I'm 5'8".
That's right. No, I mean, there's nothing average about you, but yeah, that eating, and then so how did that affect your ability to do your work and live your life? I'm just curious.
I off and on, I stopped fully competing in 2012, 2013. It was my last fight that I had, but off and on, I'd gone back to the gym during the 2015 to 2016 timeframe. I actually had hired a personal trainer to try the strength training aspect of going to the gym on the weight side, just more or less like with boxing, it was always low weight, high rep, because you never wanted to compromise your reaction time, your reflex muscles. So I never went into high weight kind of stuff. I was always a calisthenic guy, especially being locked up. I was doing push-ups and dips like nobody's business. And that always carried over till this day. I love doing push-ups. A lot of guys that are 40 years old, they're lucky if they can knock out 10. I'm like, are you kidding me? But, and they say anybody over 30, they're lucky to be able to run a mile now, if they ever will in their life again. I was like, I don't even need headphones. The music is the road and my feet hitting and the cadence of that. Like, I'm a different breed when it comes to that stuff. But I
actually read a statistic yesterday that it said less than 5% of the US population does at least 30 minutes of physical activity per day. 5%. Like, that's not that much exercise. That's crazy.
No, but I got into that. That helped. I dropped back down to like a 175. Around 2018, I was still feeling good and looking good. And I remember this because I was feeling real good leading up to SEMA that year. I had clothes that fit me in the waist size that I was. And I was still moving around. And don't get me wrong, I'd still go to the gym. I'd still spar like crazy at both the kickboxing gym and the boxing gym I had been affiliated with. And even till this day, it's always something I'm part of, whether it's off and on. But I love getting in there and banging with the young guys. And there's some of these 15-year-olds that bang like grown men. Yeah. And then there's some of these grown men that like they should have went pro, but life hit them with all different types of obstacles and kind of diverted their journey. But I like staying limber like that because it's always been where I came from and who I am. But that's where a lot of times on the business side, it's easy to take a no because it's better than taking a punch to the face.
Yeah.
And that's why no never got me down. It never like made me feel weird or bad. I mean, sometimes I felt like, oh man, I earned that, but I didn't get it. But I was like, okay, now I've just sort of challenged. Like, what can I do to make sure that that I've earned it, and also bring it to you on a silver platter with a bow tie? Because that, to me, that's the insult to you telling me no the first time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's the attitude I got from that side of it as a business owner. And a lot of times people, I've been told, I don't feel I come off this way, but some people say I'm a little strong or cocky or very sure of myself in regards to my attitude. But I guess it's because I've been around the block differently than a lot of other people. And I've also been able to travel this country for almost 10 years in this industry and see almost every aspect of it and work with all the major players and develop personal relationships with them to where I know the inner workings really well, and I still own a shop in the trenches, to say, doing it. So am I sure? Yeah. And if I'm not, I've got somebody who is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was actually thinking about that when you were telling your story. Because like I said, we've known each other for a long time, and there's this balance between, and a lot of people will misunderstand cockiness and ego. They assign that to somebody that is self-assured, and what they don't realize is that the journey to get, like you said, everybody's got a story. That journey to get to that spot and to have that confidence is, it's well earned, right? Like, you don't know my story, you don't know your story. So if you just meet us on the street and you're thinking, this guy just talks about himself all the time, or he's Mr. Confident, or any of that, it can come off. And I have this same problem. It can come off as like, this guy thinks he's all that or whatever. It's like, no, I've earned my position to speak from a spot of authority, experience, and expertise, right? Like, that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, and that's the going from, again, doing AFO and being the new guy, and seeing a lot of the leaders and the masters of the group, especially with the Detail Mafia, and being understanding my place, not being put in place, but understanding my place respectfully with them, and that being a big platform of who I've become today with that group. And then also being with mothers and understanding how the corporate world works with these big brands, and working my way up the ranks with them, from being just another guy on the team to being one of the lead guys for the paint correction side, and doing things and learning things on paint correction that most shops would take years for them to develop certain process. And it's just bringing that back, and then being able to work on these high-end vehicles and being spoiled, doing Monterey, doing Barrett Jackson on vehicles to where it's all paint and wheels. And I hate to say it that way, but it's not that it's not exciting no more, but after a while, that crafty side of being a purist is no longer a thing, because it's business.
Yeah.
And this is the vehicles, and how we execute the service, and how we make sure we manage customer expectations. All of those things have to flow together. Of course, financially, you got to have backing for the right tools, and present yourself with a proper atmosphere and presentation of yourself, and all these things, and materials. And that helps. And that's where a lot of people I do it for the passion. Listen, unless you're a freaking,
trust fund kid.
No, trust fund kid, or a nonprofit. If you're in business to make money. Can you be passion driven? Absolutely. But that whole attitude, and especially and I know I might be getting off subject, but I hate it when guys come up and it's like, I'm not like the other guys who I charge an arm and a leg. I just like to make my money and pay my bills, and I'm just happy with that. I do good work. It's like, look here, Jeffro. Like, come on.
Which, I mean, if that's your life, if that's what you want to do,
people out or being prejudiced in regards to a certain personality, but this is business. The world works on making money, and here's what I see it as. It's like, okay, can money make you happy? There's yes and no's to that. Money is the vehicle to happiness. Money is the neutral to happiness, or completely being miserable.
Yeah,
it's what you do with it that makes a difference. But money is what buys you time. If you can make enough money to have somebody else do a task that you don't have to do, then you've just bought your time to spend time with your wife, your kids, your family, to go on trips. That's the vehicle. That's how I look at it. And it also allows for other people and their happiness, because then you could also set them up and have employees, and allow yourself to charge accordingly to accommodate those employees, and have a salary and have benefits, and have them so happy they don't want to go nowhere. To where that's buying your happiness back, because those are less tasks that you have to take on as a business owner. So again, going back to business, that's what it gets under my skin when I hear people say that it can be passion driven, but it's business.
Well, business, I mean, if you're in a situation where that's like your goal, if you're a single person, or if that's kind of like if that's what makes you happy, then that's what makes you happy. But I think what happens is that there's a demeaning aspect to that if you are someone that either has money or has made money or is successful, then somehow you are less than. Because it's easy for us who have some level of a success to see them as less than, but they actually see those that are more successful as less than. And it's like, dude, do what you want to do. I always talk about just using money and your business to build the life that you want.
Yes.
And not
Yep.
not being money motivated for the sake of making money, because if you
No.
do that, you'll never have enough money.
Motivated for the life that you want.
Right. 100%.
And everybody has a different end game in that. Everybody, it could be, they could be into playing magic cards still, and that's their thing. They want to have the biggest collection ever and travel the world battling. Who knows? You know what I mean? It all, and all jokes aside, that is a thing, right? That you don't know what they're, and so, I never want to take away, but I guess for me, because again, my background of where I've come from nothing, this was, I don't want to say it wasn't meant to happen, but the karma I had against me was a lot of negative, and I shouldn't be in the position I'm in. And I only am because I just tried to be the person with all is transparent with integrity and being around the right people that saw that.
Yeah, because people could just see you, you freaking convict. What are you doing? Why aren't you back inside? I've got a buddy of mine, actually, that's in Melbourne. He's in your town. You and I have talked about him because he's like on his 4th McLaren now. We talked about maybe getting him in to do some ceramic or something with you, but anyway, I'll yell at Mike later about that. But he spent 10 years in prison for a drug conviction. And now he's a multimillionaire that has now acquired about $400 million in real estate on his way to much more than that, because he did the same thing to where, and I think it's super interesting that, like, you went through all that 18 years, going through all of those things, did your time, and then, did your house arrest. And then there was a 3-month period, if I'm right, to where you went to that boot camp. And that 3 months?
It was the whole 90 days. And that was before, right. Yeah, that was before I got let back into life to start my life.
Yeah. So but that out of 19, 20 years, there was 12 weeks that shifted the trajectory of your life, really. And so so the turning points in people's lives aren't, a day, they aren't, years. Sometimes it can be a very short amount of time, and just doing the right things for that short amount of time.
No, that's with guys who are detailing that start with nothing and end up into larger shops, going from mobile to a fixed location. It's just continuing to do the right thing with integrity by their customers, by their services, and self-investment. And that's I went through quite a few trainings. There was a lot of trainings I wanted to go to that I never had the opportunity to because I got so involved in the industry that now I'm a co-host of the training, which is really cool because it's like the flip side of it now where I'm also an instructor. So it allows me to also see the curriculum of what I would have encountered and went through, but also knowing that I'm able to give back to somebody who was once in the position I was, hungry for more education because I didn't have barely any. Yeah. So it's as I've gotten older now at 41, looking back at that 25-year-old me going into this, I still feel that here for me. But there's a lot of times where it's a pinch me moment where I got to realize how far I have come, because a lot of people now only see me for what I have, not where I was. And they only know me for what I have now with this shop and where I'm at as a leader in the industry versus where I had nothing, unemployed. Now, I wasn't living out of a car. I never got like that. But when I say nothing, I mean, I was unemployed. I still had a roof over my head. So I don't know what it's like to be on a bum. But at the same time, I also know what it's like to come from a very rough neighborhood where a lot of bums were hanging out. And I knew I never wanted to make it to that low point in my life. Yeah.
It's funny how, because I've never heard this whole story, which I think is cool. Thanks. I really appreciate you sharing that. But it's funny how intertwined our backstories are. I've never told my full story, but I have a very similar background, and I'm about 10 years older than you, almost 10 years older than you. And back in the 70s and 80s, it was the same thing. I grew up in Texas. This is how the custody thing works. And in our case, my mom had some significant problems, and they still gave her full custody because that's just Moms were better than dads. You know,
Always.
my dad's got a great job, a secure family and all that. My mom was never around and I had no adult supervision. So how about you go live with her? That sounds like a great idea. But, you know, all in all, it kind of made me who I was. But you know what, it seems like now, and you can comment on this, but it seems like now we kind of have this two sides to the industry. We have guys that kind of have stories like you that are probably more, not necessarily the same degree of kind of what we grew up with, but more of a blue collar, less educated, for, you know, less formally educated, I guess you could say. I don't want to insult people that have gone to trade shows for trade schools for sure. But we also now have this whole new set of people, which is like college educated, business degrees, a little bit more financial backing, and those. So for someone, obviously there's different ways to go about business, but for someone like yourself or someone in that blue collar state, how did you get to where you are in terms of learning how to run the business? Like, if someone's new starting out and they're just like, maybe they're mobile right now, maybe they're still trying to grow this thing, what kind of advice can you give those guys and girls to help them take that next step?
So I know the majority of society that are millionaires and billionaires were mostly C students.
Yeah.
So there's a starting point there. So one thing that I've always learned growing up is that there's a big difference between book smart and street smart. And a lot of times street smart guys will go learn a trade because they can watch and they can learn. Those same guys are the same guys that end up being, you know, entrepreneurs, but entrepreneur criminals, because they can watch and learn and execute and duplicate.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Detailers Roadmap. Hey, spoiler alert, that's us. We all know you need a kick-ass website in order to be successful with your business. The good news is, at Detailers Roadmap, kick-ass websites, that's kind of what we do. With the latest performance, designs, and SEO strategies, Detailers Roadmap is your one-stop shop to be successful on the web. And don't forget, we have the best support team in the industry. Whether you're an existing partner looking to improve your lead generation or you need a brand new website, Detailers Roadmap is here to help you be successful on the web. So go to detailersroadmap.com/success and get started today. That's detailersroadmap.com/SUCCESS.
It's just a matter of how you place that energy. You know, on my side of things, placing my energy into something positive, watching and learning, and trying to execute my own style, you know, having amazing mentors and friends, you know, and these mentors, a lot of people go in and they're coaches for them, but for me, a lot of them I've gotten so close with that they're close friends, if not my family, you know, of choice.
Yep.
But the ones that go through school, that's great. They end up with a little bit of college debt in their books, their education, and not to discredit or take away from that, but they've also got a lot of learning to do because they don't have the street smarts behind them. You know, a lot of them maybe, you know, grew up in a great household where mommy and daddy never divorced, and they had the great neighborhood where they never had to watch over their shoulder with somebody running up on them. You know what I mean? It's you know, it's a different mindset, you know, and there's still a learning curve to that. That doesn't mean that they can't ever learn what that is. They just have to put themselves in those situations, no more or less than I did. I had to put myself into situations that were uncomfortable with smarter people in the room that were educated, that did go do all that, as to where it's vice versa. The guys that are educated, that were able to have, you know, a college lifestyle and education and all these great accolades and with academics, they have to reverse that and put themselves around other people who didn't have that to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there is common sense street smart, and then there's book smart common sense. You know, it's great. You could do a math problem off top, but can you see a guy, you know, walking into a room that's about to put his hands on somebody?
Yeah.
And know that the nervous twitches of his body language are just that. You know what I mean? And profiling somebody.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some differences, and a lot of that I think can be meshed together into a hybrid of just being, you know, both, and being able to take that and apply that to business, because that is business. Profiling, body language, understanding how somebody is going to react to what you're presenting to them, whether it be a new product or a service, you know, whether it be a presentation for a business opportunity for them to come in with. You know, a lot of that says a lot, and you could tell too if they're financially ready for that by that body language, or if they're bluffing.
Yeah.
Or is that the right person I'm even talking to give this information to? Should they be privileged? So a lot of that comes into place. And then, how people, not just their body language, but the choice of words, articulating how they speak is, I've had to learn, coming from a very rough background with nothing but every other word being a cuss word, which still happens. But I've also had, I did, crazy thing is when I was in there, I read the dictionary, and I actually might be funny, but I got into rhyming, and I made a book. I actually have a book, a rhyme book, that has where I read the dictionary, and I have where I took every word with all the syllables and placed every word in this little Webster dictionary to rhyme.
Wow.
And that allowed me to actually build my vocabulary a bit more. And when I didn't remember what it meant, I'd go back and figure it out. And that helped me because I wasn't big on that side of it. I didn't know what words meant. Still to this day, sometimes I'm like, the hell did he say? Like, let me look at that, before I take offense to it. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But again, I applied myself. I put myself in situations that I was uncomfortable to make myself comfortable. All in how you speak and how you get your message across makes a world of a difference. And that's whether you're educated or not educated. Because some people who are super educated can't speak for the life of them. They can't get up in front of a crowd. You know what I mean? Versus a guy who can't speak that well, but he's up in front of that crowd with confidence, knocking it out the park.
Yeah.
Even though he's stuttering and going, it doesn't matter. He still had the confidence to get up there and actually do it.
Yeah.
So there's a balance between the two. I think that helping each other, you know what I mean, and getting these guys that are book smart in the classroom to get their hands on the craft side is great. Because there's one thing at the end of the day is you could run a business successfully, but if you don't know how to do the work, you're screwed. It's vice versa. If you know how to do the work great, but you can't run a business, you're screwed. You're only going to get so far. And that's where the balance is with us helping each other with getting each other there as an industry. And that's where the IDA has its place. There's a lot of groups now. The IDA was on the forefront of that, but now there's more smaller groups that and smarter people within these groups that are helping push forward that same idea of getting all these brands, manufacturers, higher end detailers that have been vetted for years doing this, that are super, super involved in their craft to connect with these lower guys that want to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening. We're in the process of it. I think 10, 15 years, 20 years from now, when we look back, we won't even realize that we were part of that process.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that. I don't even know what 10 to 15 years look like. I know I'm not going to retire. So, because I get so bored in about 2 hours, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see how it goes. And I love that idea about dictionary learning and teaching yourself that, because what you've done, and one of the skills that I learned, because I was in like 9 different schools the first 8 years of my 8 years of school, is I learned how to be, and I call myself a chameleon, because I learned how to talk to anyone and to be able to identify and find a common ground with everybody, whether they're, multi-billionaire, or they're just, the custodian at the high school, or whoever it happens to be. Not that person is less or worse, but and what you're talking about is that you had come from the street, so you had a certain way of communicating with other people that you had learned, but you taught yourself how to be able to be in a different room and to be able to have conversations with different people at that level, right?
Yeah.
So that's a matter of educating yourself
and learning, to your point, to respect all those different aspects, whether they are the owner or the janitor, and just understanding those choices in life that they made to be in the position that they are. They're still human, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to talk down to them just because you are in a better position, but at the same time, you could talk to them respectfully. And that's, I go into that a lot with all the different trainings, all the different places I travel to, just respectfully talking to everybody on all different levels that they operate at, because they're still human.
Yep.
Regardless of where I'm at, I'm still a technician that has to go back to my shop Monday morning and deal with a customer that sees no value in what I do as a detailer, and they're just shopping.
Yep.
So, and I see that all day long, just because of what I've done for my resume in the industry. Is it helpful at the shop? Hell yeah. But not every day, not every customer.
Right.
you know, because they still look at us as, you know, janitors.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And it
Hey, so
sucks.
yeah, I mean, but again, you're successful. You have a great family. Obviously we're friends on Facebook, so I get to see your, kind of your family 2.0 a little bit. I don't know if
I
that's
don't post
accurate.
much with the family stuff because
Yeah.
I've kept that I keep that quiet. You know, I
Yeah.
stick to the positives. I stick to the stuff for the industry. I don't post a lot on my personal page with my family. My wife does more of that, and I'll share that stuff. But
Yeah,
I don't want to say I'm
I'm friends with
private.
her. I'm friends with
Yeah,
her also, so I get to see all the
yeah.
inside
If you
stuff,
know me,
right?
you know. But most of that is all private. It's like I don't
Right.
need to broadcast that out in the world. Like that's not to me. Social media. I came from the MySpace era, so it's like I don't need to broadcast that.
Yeah.
If you know me, I've got a big enough circle of friends, and there's a lot of my circle's so damn big. I've only got so much time in the day too.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because with Michelle and I, with Detailers Helper, we built a brand around the two of us, which actually we saw as kind of this ministry encouragement opportunity to show a side of marriage that doesn't exist all the time, and to show like anything that we post on social is actually our real life, right? Like we don't really, you know, what do they call it? We don't cultivate it. We don't try to, make things different than they are. But yeah, I totally get the being private part of it. But yeah, I love seeing that stuff. And like I said, I get to see it because I'm friends with your wife on Facebook too.
We used to post more. Don't get me wrong. I mean, before like when my son, because he's older, but before I had my daughter who's 6 and my new son who's now a little over a year, I mean, we were down in South Beach like once a month. We would
Yeah.
hit the weekend, pull the car in the parking garage, and just be adults and drink and have fun. And we lived the nightlife. And we would get a babysitter, and we did it the right way, the respectful way. I mean, Monday through Friday, I didn't joke around. It was business. But come the weekend, Friday night, Saturday, it was game on. We'd go out, we'd do clubbing. I mean, we lived a good nightlife. We got that out of our system for a very long time and had a good social life and still do. But every so often, like just recently, went out Friday night. We did dinner with some friends. We went to one of the local spots. I had like 1 or 2 drinks just to try to drink because I haven't been drinking at all. And we took it home. We were home by like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And it was like, okay, that's it.
Time for bed.
But we still enjoyed ourselves. When we look back,
Yeah.
and we're like, damn, like literally like 10 years ago, we would have been raging till like 2 o'clock in the morning, shutting the place down, enjoying ourselves. Now, we always did it responsibly. We never got in trouble. We never got DUIs. We never were idiots, but we had fun. And that was the biggest thing. She is still to this day my partner in crime, just as much as, Michelle is your partner in crime, but it's, we used to broadcast it a little bit more. We don't do that as much anymore.
I mean, that's probably a good thing. Hey, I want to shift gears a little bit. I've kept you forever. When this launches, we're probably 3 weeks from SEMA.
Okay.
So you and I have been talking about some cool stuff that are going to happen. So we'll do our pre-SEMA advertisement. What's going on at SEMA for Buff and Shine? I know you're going to be there for Buff and Shine. So, this, like I said, we're probably 3.5 weeks out by the time that this launches. So we're in deep in SEMA season. So I want to know what's coming up at SEMA in the next few weeks.
So going into SEMA, we are, everybody knows that Buff and Shine has launched the newest, most innovative pad in the industry, the EdgeGuard pad. So we will have that on site along with some other surprises that we may or may not have at the booth. But if you're not at SEMA, you won't know. Or if you are at SEMA, you definitely got to make your way to our booth. Of course, the Buff and Shine booth. And for that week, we are going to have guests doing live podcasts, including Mr. Kevin Davis.
Yep.
And hopefully Chris as well will be joining you on behalf of Detailers Roadmap for Thursday, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think we're shooting for Thursday. So yeah, that'll be good. And we're going to, I'll be, I think I'm pretending to be Larry Casilla this SEMA, because I'll actually have a videographer following me around, and I'm going to do individual interviews in our industry and then kind of across because I have a broader network. So we're going to be doing, automotive people, TV people, and that kind of thing. So that'll be fun. So we'll definitely get you on even more camera. But that'll be fun to be in the booth and do a couple podcasts while we're there.
Yeah, having you guys there, having our other guests there that are going to be doing podcasts throughout the week, and then
because we got Rad Company, right? Like we got Rad Company, Road
yep,
FS guys, and
Road
who else?
FS, and then I believe Alex Russell from the Detail Solutions podcast. Yep.
Okay.
So I'm still working out logistics with him overall. However, that week, just come by the booth, see our new products, and of course, meet the staff, meet the owner himself, Rich, the brains behind all the pads since 1987. So, it's just good vibes always at the Buff and Shine booth with all the distributors that we work with. And as a manufacturer, that's the thing, is we work with so many. Yeah. And they are such a legacy brand in our industry. So come by, support us, say hi. And
we're gonna have my man crush, Mark Elliott, is gonna be there again, I hope, this year.
I hope so. I know Mark always, Mark's a full-time firefighter, so
yeah, and he runs two different, it's two huge shops.
Three. He has one in Atlanta. He has a tint shop in Atlanta. Yeah.
Jeez, that guy.
Yep. Mark is a man who wears many different hats and always comes in red eye from his evening shifts at the fire station.
Yeah, I need to reach out to him again about being on here. He's an amazing story. My wife comes from a family of firefighters, so we kind of have and then my daughter's a paramedic in Atlanta, ironically. And so for first responders and all that, I have kind of a special affection for those guys. And Mark's just a beautiful big black man, so it's hard not to love Mark. So
he is.
So yeah, so that'll be fun to be at SEMA, and it's exciting. That's when it's like our family union, right? Like that's when a lot of my friends, probably 80% of my friends, that's the only time of year that I see them in person. So it's a lot of fun to be there and do that. So hey, I want to ask you, we're on Detailers Roadmap Cruise Control podcast, so I know that you're a couple of months, 3 months into your new website now. How, and I know we kind of went through a couple of months probably by the time this goes.
June 2nd or 4th, something like that.
Yeah, so we're almost 3 months in. How's that? I know the process was awesome for you. We've talked about that in another podcast. How are things going? And kind of give me your 2 cents of the importance of a great website. And honestly, like, of course, we want to be your partner at Detailers Roadmap, but even if you do it yourself or choose another vendor, I want to know why what do we tell guys on the importance of using this tool?
So I don't want to give you just a quick answer because I feel like there's no value behind that, because I could just say, oh yeah, it's great, woohoo, I'm rooting them on. Yes, but the background to that is I've had a website since 2011. I was in the early days for coming out of the phone books, right? And when AT&T
Yellow Pages for $180 a month,
when they did their bundle of being in there and giving you a 5 template web page, that's how it all got started for me. And back, like, I want to say 11 or 12. So I've had that, and I've experienced the different evolution of going with somebody different and better each time. And my last established web designers were awesome, and they were my business partners with something else, and they dropped doing that and focused back on the new business, which was great because they had me as maintenance. But during that time, about 2016 is when they built my website, and it did great then. But it fell short this last year, and I've always had my eyes on what Chris was doing with Detailers Roadmap and talking with him. And I was like, if anybody was going to build a new website that was relevant, it would be them. I got to have a reason because I'm a very loyal person.
Yeah.
As soon as the other outfit, I want to say dropped the ball, but I had an issue with the website falling off, not by their fault. It got hacked basically for like 5-6 weeks. I felt it. I felt it in what was coming through my front door, and that's when I pulled the trigger, and I'm glad I did, because it's been a world of a difference, from the communication, the development, and the customization of what you guys have done over there, and the team at Detailers Roadmap. That was exactly what I was looking for. And it was like telling a tattoo artist what you want and him drawing it on paper and giving exactly what you had in your imagination.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And then executing, once it was launched, what it's done in my market. Now, granted, I've got 1 or 2 other Detail Roadmap customers in my market, but I not only saw the drop off from my other website falling off and it hurt, but I also saw it pick back up. And that's how I knew it was, I got hurt from that. But the consistency of the contact forms and the compliments I get from the website are amazing. And because it now matches our brand so well for what I've evolved to at the shop, I couldn't ask for nothing more. And I think everybody I've talked to, whether they're mafia members or just detailers in the industry, they've all had great success stories from utilizing your guys' services. But me personally, is it money up front? Yes. And is it more expensive than than the majority of what's out there? Yeah. If you want a quick fix, at least get a quick fix for now.
Yeah.
Get your domain, get your quick fix, get started. When you can afford it, 100% go all in, because it is one of the best return on investments that you'll get digitally for your brand. And it does so much for you online. And then when you want to start talking market share, we're not just talking the market share in your backyard. We're talking digital market share. Mm-hmm. That's where that starts. Having a good website that's laid out, that speaks the right language to all the different web servers and search engines. And that is what I think Detailers Roadmap, their team does for a living, like what I do for a living. Making vehicles look good, knowing the ins and outs of that, how to do that, how to meet expectations or exceed expectations. And that's what you guys have done overall. So it's worked well for me. I'm very happy with it. And I would definitely suggest somebody to pull the trigger if they're on the fence.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, dude, you can't get much of a better testimonial than that for sure. Well, hey, I know you're trying to run a business. I appreciate you taking the time today. How do people learn more about what you've got going on? I know like you've got trainings that you're involved in some different things. How do they find out more, and how do they spy a little bit on your business? Give me your website address. And then definitely come by at SEMA and you'll see us there. You'll definitely be able to see Justin there and Mark Elliott and all the different crew. William Laura will probably be there, and a bunch of different Buff and Shine representatives as well. So hey, give me that information and then we'll let you go.
For me, it just, you could find me at Justin Labato for any of the social media stuff. It's mainly like Facebook. But as far as my business, it's JL Showroom Auto Salon, showroomautosalon.com. As far as, I always post where I'm traveling to. For example, next week I'll be at the Bays Chicago Auto Pros, helping out with the training there with, I think, Gian. And then a couple weeks after that, I'll be at Majestic Solutions in the Carolinas, with those guys hosting a one-day correction and pad education day. And then the week after that, I will be in Ventura, California with Jeremy at Shine Supply. I love going out there.
Nice.
And they're doing their
say hi for me to Jeremy. Love that guy.
And then I take a little break and go to SEMA. And then after SEMA, no traveling. I get to stay home for the holidays and then amp up for Mobile Tech Expo at the end of January, beginning of February.
Nice. Yeah. So I've got to go to South Carolina towards the end of September, which obviously would have already passed by the time this launches, but I'm doing the Onyx training there. I'm going to do some business stuff and web stuff and trying to connect with those guys. Those guys have been really good about trying to connect with everybody in the industry. So I think it'll be fun to get to know those guys. And they have a very strong Spanish speaking market. And that's a big part of what they're doing. And so we're looking at how we as a company, Detailers Roadmap, can integrate better and to help that whole market segment, in and of itself, because that's kind of a different animal, so to speak. So I'm super excited to go down there and talk to those guys for a couple of days. But dude,
I was going to touch on that. Carlos from Onyx, who runs Onyx basically in North America, he just recently went through Rennie's 5-day training.
Yeah, I saw that. I asked that. He was like, dude, it was such an amazing experience. Yeah, Carlos Gonzalez, he's a super cool guy. I had an opportunity when we were at AFO. I was sitting there on my laptop, 6 a.m. in the hotel lobby, and he came by. So we had a chance to sit and chat and talk TV and talk internet and all, web and codings and all that. So that's the best thing about this industry, is to be able to have those connections and to be able to continue to build friendships. And speaking of friendships, man, I really value the connection that you and I have had all these years and our friendship, and I can't wait for it to get better. So when we're sitting around 15 years from now going, man, I can't believe how far this thing has come.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a great day.
All right, Kevin. Thank you. And everybody at Detailers Roadmap. Take care.
Head over to detailersroadmap.com and get your one-stop success solution today.